regime has been published. An Iranian refugee living in Billingham's written a book criticising the relationship between democracy and Islam, saying that the two cannot coexist. For years, human rights groups have expressed serious concerns that the Iranian government will resort to violence to suppress its people. The country's political system is known as fundamental law. Mahmoud Ismaeilian, who left Iran 5 years ago, writes that religion and politics should be totally separate from one another. Suki Bajada has been looking at the issue of religion and democracy here on Teesside.
You could call it good versus evil, or even prayers versus politics. But author Mahmoud Ismaeilian would rather say Islam versus democracy.
That's precisely a conscious decision to make the Islam and democracy. How separate these are. There's an unworkable relationship between Islam and democracy. In the democratic systems, even an animal has got certain rights. But once experiencing life in certain Islamic countries, you will realize that even the human life is worthless. That's why the issue of democracy is so important to be raised at this stage.
Speaking through an interpreter, he said his experiences of living in Iran under an Islamic rulership made him question why a country ruled by a religion promoting peace had such an appalling human rights record.
Religion should be totally separated from the politics. So once these two amalgamate, there's an unworkable relationship between Islam and democracy. Even in the Western world, religion is practiced according to whoever wants to practice religion. So that's precisely the religion is should be treated as a separate item for the human being, so that a personal relationship with the God, whatever.
But as we all know, there's always two sides to the story. Walid Islam is an imam at the Abu Bakr Mosque in Middlesbrough, though he's originally from Egypt.
Personally, what I think is people now is just blaming religion, everything that occurs around the world at the moment. They don't blame the individuals for their own mistakes, they just want to generalize everything. And it's another example of people trying to make a couple of pounds in the name of religion again. We don't have a problem in Egypt. People are demonstrating their own rights in every way, shape or form. Again, people are mixing and confusing between democracy and religion, thinking that they two are separate and they cannot be together. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's like they're hating my religion for something my religion never committed. You know what Hitler did to the Jews and the Holocaust and all that? People didn't blame Christianity and every single Christian around the world for what happened to the Jews. They only blamed Hitler, although Hitler was a divine Christian.
Tayyip Kaznazani is a Kurd who lived in northern Iraq under the Saddam Hussein regime and says that militant groups in the Middle East have ways of making people conform.
We have and we had problem with the Islamic groups also. They always announcing jihad against the Kurdish parties, which they think they are against Islam, and they don't believe that they are a Muslim. That after the removal of the Saddam, those parties are being attacked by the US and by the Kurdish force, but still they have a link and they are existing still now in the region. And a band is being discovered by the Kurdish intelligence service doing activities like beheading people and killing people and offending people. That group using people by having a sexual relation with them. The reasons they did a videotape with them, and after they become a drunk and give them drugs, they become uncautious. They've been sexually abused. After they recorded that, they said, if you are not following us, we would broadcast your videotape to your family. He knew that he would be killed because this is not acceptable by his community and it's not acceptable by his religion. And that's why he was forced to follow in them.
Despite behaviour like this in some Islamic countries, Imam Walid insists that it's the rulers rather than the religion who are fighting democracy.
Islam is actually democracy. Democracy is part of Islam. You know, if anybody says Islam and democracy are not part of each other, they're wrong. The first caliph in Islam, Abu Bakr, when he was elected, he stood up in front of the people and said to them, you have elected me, and I want you to correct me if I make a mistake. And he was a leader of the Muslims at that time. And they said to him, if we see any mistakes from you, we'll correct you even with our swords. This is the people, they did not go around and start killing these people who opposed or these people who said this word. He actually was happy and said, I have to thank God that there are people who will correct me when I make a mistake. If this is not democracy and this is not the true democracy, what democracy is, I don't know.
But with the disappearance and murder of intellectuals, journalists and politicians, and a suspiciously high level of execution being highlighted by a United Nations report, just what does the future hold?
Of course, we've got to bear in mind that the generation in 21st century is totally different, which a human being now has got reached a stage where freedom is one of the most sacred sort of present which a human being can have. And the history never repeats itself twice. The people have gained quite a lot of consciousness as to what's going on and towards the leadership. And Mr. Ismaeilian is very optimistic the next leadership would not be able to commit what is happening now. So he's quite optimistic that the world will change towards a better future.
Fascinating, which begs the question, I suppose, is religion in these countries interfering with politics, or is politics interfering with religion? But here we are in a country where our top Church of England bishops automatically get a seat in Parliament. So we thought we'd take a look at this morning, at whether there's room for God in a modern democracy like ours. Later we'll be joined by the Bishop of Durham, who has a seat in the House of Lords himself. In the meantime, we're always happy to hear your thoughts on anything we're talking about on Breakfast. Should the Church stay out of politics? Can we trust politicians with tough moral issues modern day life throws at us?